Monday, the 10th day of May, 2021. And this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Town of Newburgh Town Board. First order of business is roll call. Mrs. Green,
Here.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Present.
Mr. Manley,
Here.
Mr. Lobiondo,
I'm here.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Here.
Okay, everybody, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Okay, everybody. Mr. Supervisor, any changes to the agenda?
I have no changes.
Okay,
Nothing.
anyone else? Okay, then, let's move on to item 5, approval of the audit.
All right, so looking for a motion to approve this audit in the amount of $345,498.52.
So move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Okay, next we go on to item 6 for Monticello Raceway Management, State Environmental Quality Review, rezoning petition, lead agency declaration.
All right, so this resolution basically says that we will be the lead agency in seeker determination. I feel that that is appropriate, and I think the other members too. So if someone want to make a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Councilwoman Green seconded that motion. Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 7 for the Highway Department. The first item is approval to award bid for tree cutting.
Yes, and if you remember, this was on the last agenda and we needed more explanation. Mark Hall wasn't available at the time. He since has explained to us, I think. So on this first one, it'll be Alpine Tree Service for option A, B, and D. Someone want to make that motion?
So move.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes. And then we'll look for a motion for Lewis Tree Service for option C.
I'll make that motion.
May I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Okay, next we go on to item B for the Highway Department. Approval to award bid for heavy equipment rentals.
All right, so here, Mark Hall, our highway superintendent, is recommending that we actually receive the bids from all of these vendors, which is Alto Construction, A. Montano, Fred Cook Jr., Herc Rentals, Inc., Hoffman Equipment, H.O. Penn, Gesso, Inc., and United Rentals. And his reasoning was depending on availability, so he could just go down the list to make sure we can get the equipment. So someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second your motion.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 8 for the assessor, settlement of tax certiorari for Cintas.
All right, again, on this one, we had this before us before, and we had taken it down to do more research, and I know that Councilwoman Green has contacted Kathy Drobny. And Betty, you seem to be okay with this as it stands at this point?
Yes,
All right. So does someone want to make a motion to accept this settlement?
I'll make the motion since I've been working on it.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 9. We have 2 resolutions to schedule a public hearing. The first one is the schedule a public hearing for hotel occupancy tax local law.
All right. And just on this one here, we've actually been going after this for more than 10 years. This time, Skoufis and Jacobson presented it for us and the governor actually signed it. So we're going to schedule a public hearing for our local law on this hotel motel tax. And I'm saying we will schedule it for June 14th at 7:00 PM, if that's okay. So we'll look for that motion.
I'll make the motion. I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next public hearing that needs to be scheduled is for introductory local law number 2 of 2021, which is temporary outdoor dining permits.
All right, so here it's a resolution that we will schedule a public hearing for June 14th at 7:10 PM. And this deals with dining outside, which become popular since the virus has come. And we're trying to make it a little more permanent, and that's what this law will be doing. So someone want to make that motion for the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 10 for animal control. This is a T94 withdrawal for Newburgh Veterinary Hospital.
All right, so Tracy Carvel, our animal control officer, is asking us to expend $424.47 from our T94 account, which is a donation account, and that's for services by Newburgh Veterinary Hospital. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion. I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 11 for the planning board. This is a landscape security for Ready Coffee.
So Karen Arnett, the landscape architect, is suggesting that we reduce the landscape security for coffee roasters by $10,000. So I'll look for a motion to reduce that landscape security for this project by that amount of money.
I'll make them.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 12 for the Recreation Department. First item is to approve to hire 2 part-time laborers.
All right, so Jim Prasuti, our Parks Commissioner, I guess interviews have been performed, these jobs have been advertised. And the first one is for Norman Carrad to be a recreation laborer, a part-time position at $15.31 per hour with a starting date of May 24th, 2021. Someone want to make that motion?
so move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes. So now we're going to make he's also Commissioner Pursuti is recommending Michael Passion as a recreation laborer, part-time, $15.31 an hour. The start date of May 24th, 2021, and both of these are based on the physical in the background, of course. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second your motion.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
yes,
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item B for approval to hire
Oh, just there's one more. Yep,
one seasonal worker.
correct. Okay, so again, James Pursuti is looking to hire Anthony Zumbrata as a recreation laborer. It's a seasonal position, $15.31 per hour, start date of May 24th, 2021.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second your motion.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
yes,
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes,
Next, we go on to item C, approval to modify salary of seasonal worker.
okay, so I guess Miss Shannon Mazingo, we had hired her at a rate of $15.50, but we should have been at $18.51 due to her responsibilities and experience. So this is just an increase from $15.50 to $18.51 for Shannon Mazingo. And this will, she only started a week ago, I believe, Jim. Shaking his head, yes, so, okay. So we'll make that go back to her start date at 1851. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes,
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes,
Next, we go on to item D, approval to solicit bids to construct pickleball courts.
all right, so again, our Commissioner Pursuti is looking for permission to go out for bids for a pickleball court. This will be a Monarch Drive, where we had a park before. Jim, can you unmute yourself and just tell us a little bit on this while we vote on it? There you go.
Okay, yeah, this is where the old basketball courts used to be on Monarch Drive. There's plenty, we have a pretty good sized parcel of parkland right there. And where the basketball courts used to be is a perfect spot because there's already a base down to put 4 pickleball courts there.
All right, very good, Jim. Does someone want to make a motion then that will proceed with?
I'll make the motion.
And I'll second your motion.
I'm sorry, who made that motion, please? Is that Councilman
I did.
Ruggiero?
Councilman Manley did.
Oh, thank you very much. And Councilwoman Green, you seconded that motion. Thank you
Yes,
very
I
much.
did.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
yes,
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes,
Last item for Recreation Department is item E. Approval to allow New Windsor Department of Recreation to use portable stage.
all right, and we've done this quite a bit with other municipalities, but we do have a letter from Matt Bernowski. And they're looking to borrow the stage for a May 12th event in New Windsor. And they will come pick it up tomorrow or whatever, but someone want to make that motion and they'll supply insurance for it as well.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
yes,
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes,
Next, we go on to item 13 for the Police Department. Approval to hire one dispatcher.
all right, and again, interviews have been done on this and they're hired off a county list. This is a full-time dispatcher position at a rate of $21.71 as per the CSEA contract. with a start date of on or after May 24th of 2021. So, and again, based on physical and background. Someone want to make that motion?
I'd like to make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes,
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes,
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 14 for the engineering department. The first item, A, is approval to solicit bids for Roaston Headworks modification.
All right, so this is a motion to start the solicitation of bids and the receiving of bids. Advertised for bids May 14th, 2021, received bids June 8th, 2021. And that's for the Roaston Hills Sewer Plant project. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes,
Mr. Lobiondo,
yes,
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item B for engineering. A public hearing order for Chadwick Lake Resiliency Improvements Project Cost Increase.
All right, so this project was bid and came in about $385,000 over budget. So we're going to have another public hearing on this matter. So we're looking for a motion for a public hearing on June 14th at 7:20 p.m. to increase the cost of the Chadwick Lake filtration improvements. And remember, we're being funded on this by New York City.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
yes,
Mr. Lobiondo,
yes,
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 15 for the Code Compliance Department. Carroll Temporaries Permanent Staffing Service, approval to install temporary trailer.
All right, and it's very unfortunate, but they did experience a fire on Carroll Temporaries, which is at 41 Route 17K. And what they're asking for is a trailer so they continue to operate at that location. We've done this before. The only thing I'm going to ask for is that we will okay it until November 30th of 2021. And if it has to stay longer, they'll have to, hopefully they'll have it done by then. If not, they'll have to come back to the board before that. So does someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes,
Mr. Lobiondo,
yes,
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Okay, next we go on to item 16 for the Accounting Department, a group of budget transfers.
All right, here, I'm not going to read these transfers off. This is not an increase or decrease to the budget, but I would like it to be approved as presented here, number 16. And it should be in the packet. If anyone listening, they could pull it up.
I'll make a motion as presented.
No,
I'll second.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll second. I'm sorry, Betty.
No problem.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes,
Mr. Lobiondo,
yes,
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 17 for announcements.
All right, with that, Betty, do you have anything tonight?
Nothing tonight from me.
Paul, you have anything?
yeah, I got a few things, Bill. People drive around the town, they're seeing some roads with partial blacktop on them. What they're doing is they're just leveling the roads that are going to be paved. So don't be alarmed thinking that's the finished product. That's just to make the road level, take the crown out of it, to add areas to the shoulder. That's what that's about. I had some calls on it, and that's what they're actually doing. The other thing is Music in the Park starts June 3rd, 6 p.m. with Dr. Magneto. And then our Memorial Day Parade ceremony is 5/30/21. That's a Sunday at 11 a.m. at Town Hall. If anybody's interested in going, I would be there by around 10:45. It's a real
Excuse
nice
me,
ceremony.
that's at 10 o'clock, not at 11 o'clock. Because lineup for the parade starts at 12
That's right.
to
That's
live, to allow the fire companies to get back and get trucks and
Thank
all
you,
like
Betty.
that.
Yep, 10 a.m. And lastly, animal control is looking for donations all the time. So if anybody's out there, animal lover that's listening in, please donate to our animal control department. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Paul. Scott, you have anything?
Well, I'll add to Paul's. I mean, we're gonna have the parade that kicks off at 1 o'clock, and we are bringing the parade back. It's very exciting. I'm very glad we're able to do it.
Yes.
Very good, Scott. With that, Anthony, you have anything?
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
All right. So with that, we'll open it to the public. Bobby, people with their hands up, the public.
Yeah, if anyone who has a comment, if they could, also if you could raise it on in Zoom, if you know how to, that's the easiest way.
Okay. Physically, I see Donette had her hand up. Could we go to Donette? Could we unmute Donette? You may have to unmute too, Donette there. Okay, we got you.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Okay, so I'm just trying, of course, to understand the casino issue. I read that resolution, but quite frankly, I wasn't sure what it was telling me. It said the town is going to be the lead agency. What does that mean exactly? What does that mean, the lead?
Well, okay, usually it's one of two things. Either it's the planning board on projects or it's us. So environmental issues, which include a lot of things from traffic on down, the town board will make that determination, not the planning board. And in about a week or so, we're going to have a meeting with our Zoom meeting with our consultants who have studied the topic. And we're going to have them on a Zoom meeting for their comments before we make any decisions on anything. So that's basically it on it.
Okay, so a decision yet hasn't been determined about changing that law, about allowing video terminal machines inside of malls. That one hasn't been decided yet?
No, that this is all, we're building up to that, but eventually we'll be there. But we got to make sure the board understands all the issues and environmentally friendly, if you would. So.
Okay, so, but I guess that's mostly what I wanted to know. That one hasn't happened yet. The comprehensive plan, it mentioned somewhere about that, about the comprehensive plan update. Is there an update? Where can we find that?
Well,
That's kind of what, excuse me, that was kind of my baby of wanting to do this year when we had our reorganization meeting. Go ahead, Gil.
And we've already signed an agreement with Dave Smith or whatever, who helped us with the plan years ago. And we will identify what items to look at and whatnot. That'll be done this year.
Okay, just because, you know, the resolution said that it was consistent with the updated comprehensive plan, but I didn't know where the updated comprehensive plan was to know if it was consistent with it or not.
We're going to ask Mark Taylor, but that update might have been in 2005. But Mark, can you unmute maybe and answer that for us? Could we unmute Mark Taylor? Go ahead, Mark.
Yes, the last amendment to the town's comprehensive plan was called the comprehensive plan update, and that was undertaken, as supervisor said, around 2005. That is available on the website. The town clerk can confirm that, or at the town clerk's office. So you just need to search.
I've seen it, Mark. I'm familiar with it. I want, just because this said it was consistent with the comprehensive plan update, I thought there actually has been an update since 2005, but I guess
No, that's the title of the document.
On that. Okay, that's all. Just I
Okay.
didn't want to miss something. All right, couple more things. Sorry. When it comes to hiring employees, I'm just wondering why they're part-time, like 2 part-time laborers. Why not just 1 full-time employee?
But quite often too with these seasonal, it's just what it is. It's seasonal. There's a lot more work sometimes during the summer months. And sometimes it doesn't pay to have an employee full-time on some of these assignments. So it's all based in the budget. I mean, we have 180 full-time employees, but part-timers work out well, and quite often they turn out to be like college kids and whatnot that really looking for something to do during the summer. So it's been in place for many years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Anyone else out there? Raise your hand on Zoom or physical.
If anyone, they can raise their hand in real life and we'll see
Do
it.
it the real way, like this. Okay, we'll see you.
Mhm.
The
Anybody
only other
else?
person is Megan Taylor.
Okay.
If she wants to comment, she can unmute now. If not,
No, I think, Megan, do you want to make comments on anything or just here to observe?
Just here to observe, Supervisor. No comments.
All right, very good, Megan. Thank you.
so that's everyone.
All right, that's everyone. All right, so with that, I guess I'll make a motion to adjourn. Someone will.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second your motion.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn at 7:25 PM. Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piacquadio.
Yes, and thank you, everyone. Have a good night.